This happened 8 years ago. I was 24 and had been a paranormal investigator for a couple of years. I led a team into a remote forest because I heard the stories about disappearances. I thought we could uncover something real. I never stopped thinking about it that we set up camp in a clearing. It was quiet, almost too quiet. The trees towered over us, blocking out the sun. Shadows crept in as night fell. I tried to shake off the feeling that something was watching us. We took turns monitoring the area. Deep inside, I felt uneasy. Perhaps it was just me. Around midnight, we heard something strange. At first, I thought it was laughter. It echoed through the trees, almost playful. My heart raced. I tried to stay calm, but I couldn't. I glanced at my team. They exchanged nervous looks. It felt all too real. The night dragged on. We gathered around the campfire, reviewing our notes. Then we heard whispers. They were soft, like someone struggling to talk. It sent chills up my spine. The laughter stopped, but those whispers lingered. I looked at my team. Their faces were pale. The next day, we reviewed the recording. We were shocked. There were sounds we hadn't noticed during the investigation. I thought it was my imagination, but the audio didn't lie. Then came messages from the team. One guy, Carl, told me he saw a figure in the woods near his house. He didn't sleep for days. I thought he was just stressed from the trip. As I dove back into the recordings, an unease washed over me. The familiar silence now felt dreadful. My phone buzzed with more messages from the others. They were experiencing odd events, flickering lights, unexplained noises. I tried to convince myself it was just coincidence, but part of me knew better. I began to realize we might have awakened something that night. Something we shouldn't have disturbed. I pushed those thoughts aside, searching for comfort in logic. But then came the worst moment. I listened to the recording again. That laughter came through clear as day, along with the whispers. It was haunting. Then, it happened. I received a call late one night. A voice crackled over the line. I couldn't recognize it. "Why did you come here?" it asked. I wanted to respond, but I froze. Panic hit me. I can't be sure what happened next. I felt cold, like something was right behind me. I turned, expecting to see nothing. But there, at the edge of my bed, was a shadow. It stood still, just watching. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. I blinked, and it was gone. I reached for my phone, wanting to call Carl, but all I found was a text from him. "It's here. I can feel it." I couldn't shake the fear. I stared at my darkened room, waiting for something to happen. Then, from my closet, I heard the laughter again. It echoed, sending chills down my spine. I couldn't tell if it was real or in my head. I knew one thing: whatever we uncovered that night, it wasn't done with us yet. The next few days were a blur. I barely slept. Each time I closed my eyes, that laughter crept back in, wrapping around me like a vice. My phone buzzed constantly, texts and calls from the team. They were all feeling it. The shadows, the whispers, it was as if we had a target painted on our backs. Carl was the worst. He called every night. "I can hear it, he said one time. "It watches me as I sleep." His voice trembled, and I felt a knot twist in my stomach. I wanted to tell him he was imagining things, but his distress was palpable. I couldn't shake the feeling that we had stirred something dangerous. Then came the news. A woman named Marissa, who lived about 10 miles from the forest, went missing. She was last seen walking her dog near the edge of the woods. My heart sank. I couldn't help but wonder if it was connected to our investigation. Panic surged through me. Had we awakened something that took her? I needed answers. So, I decided to visit Marissa's neighborhood. I parked my car and approached her house. It loomed quietly, almost as if it were holding its breath. The lawn was overgrown, weeds creeping up the front steps. Something felt off. I walked to the door and knocked, but there was no answer. As I turned to leave, I noticed something shiny at the edge of the front porch. I bent down to pick it up. It was a small silver pendant with an inscription, "Forever a part of you." A chill ran down my spine. I felt drawn to it, like I had to keep it. I put it in my pocket. That night, I clutched the pendant as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was now linked to me. I heard a tapping at my window, the sound echoed my unease. I turned to look, but nothing was there. Just shadows playing tricks. That I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was an animal or the wind. But just as I settled down, I heard a soft whisper, clear as day. "Help me." My heart raced. The voice was unmistakably female. It sent a jolt through my body. I sat up, breathing heavily. Was this Marissa? I grabbed my phone to record, but the screen flickered. My flashlight died, leaving me in darkness. Panic surged through me. I could hear a faint sound, like footsteps outside. I wasn't alone. Then, everything went quiet. An unsettling silence washed over the room, almost deafening. And that's when I saw it, a figure standing in the corner, barely illuminated by the dying light of my phone. It was a woman, her face hidden in shadow, her features twisted by fear. "Please," she whispered again, her voice trembling. "You have to stop it." I froze, the weight of her words sinking in. Who was she? What did she mean? Before I could draw a breath, she vanished into thin air. I was left gaping at the spot where she stood, heart pounding. It was clear now. Whatever we had disturbed years ago wanted something from us. I had to find out more. I had to uncover what really happened to Marissa before it was too late. The next day, I couldn't shake the image of the woman from my mind. I needed to talk to someone who might know more about Marissa and her disappearance, so I headed to the local library. It felt like a good place to dig up the past. I had to find out if anyone had seen anything suspicious around that area. Walking in, the musty scent of old books overwhelmed me. I approached the librarian, a kindly older woman with glasses that rested on the tip of her nose. I introduced myself and asked if she had any records on Marissa or local incidents related to the woods. Her face shifted, and I noticed a flicker of concern in her eyes. "Things have happened there," she said softly, looking around as if someone might overhear us. "Mysterious things. But it's not something people like to discuss." Her reluctance only fueled my urgency. "What kind of things?" I pressed. She hesitated before leading me to a dusty back room. As she rifled through old newspapers, I caught snippets about missing persons, strange noises, and even stories about people who claimed to see figures in the woods. My chest tightened as I began to realize how many lives had been touched by whatever darkness lurked there. Then I found an article about Marissa's disappearance. There was a photograph of her, smiling while holding her dog. It felt eerie and painful to look at. But even more unsettling was a line about an ongoing investigation into local reports of a whispering entity. I felt my stomach drop. I glanced up at the librarian, but she was looking away. "They say it feeds on fear," she murmured, as if she hadn't meant to speak out loud. "And once it knows you're afraid, it's hard to shake." I needed to know more. "What does it want?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, but she just shook her head, her expression a mix of sadness and fear. "It said to take what it craves. Sometimes, people never return." My hands were trembling now. The whispers, the chilling laughter I had heard before, felt like they were closing in around me. I repeated the inscription from the pendant in my head, "Forever a part of you." I had to get to the woods. I had to confront this. As I drove toward the forest, the sunlight began to fade, painting the sky in ominous shades of purple. An unsettling dread settled in my stomach. I parked at the edge of the woods, the trees standing tall like silent guards. I hesitated, fighting the urge to turn back, that I stepped into the thick shadows, the air thickening as I ventured deeper. My heart raced with every crack of twigs underfoot. I had to know the truth. I had to understand what had happened to Marissa, when I heard its soft whispers weaving through the trees, like a haunting melody pulling me further in. They echoed the same plea I had heard before. Help me. In that moment, I realized I might not be alone in this quest. Something else was there, and it was no longer just a shadow. It was watching me. The chill slithered down my back, but I pressed on. I needed answers, and it wouldn't stop until I found them. What was hidden in those woods? As I took another shaky step forward, the whispers escalated, filling the air with urgency. I could sense it now, the presence, and I knew I was not prepared for what awaited me. I moved deeper into the forest, the whispers turning into an almost tangible presence around me. The once faint calls had grown louder, more insistent. Help me. It felt like a demand rather than a request. Every pulse of sound echoed through the trees, sending chills across my skin. At that moment, I stumbled into a small clearing. The trees seemed to part just for me, and as I stepped into the open space, I froze. In the center, I found an old, weathered stone. The surface was covered in strange carving symbols that looked both familiar and foreign. They felt alive, glowing faintly in the dim light filtering through the leaves. A sudden rustle behind me made my heart leap. I turned, half expecting to see a face staring back at me from the shadows. Instead, it was only a shimmering mist, swirling like smoke. It danced around the clearing, almost beckoning me forward, guiding me toward the stone. Marissa? I whispered into the cool air, though I knew she wouldn't answer. The symbols on the stone began to flicker, and the whispers escalated again, weaving together like a chorus haunting my very soul. As I stepped closer, the ground beneath me shifted. I stumbled again, losing my balance but catching myself on the stone. I could feel an electric energy flow through me, as if the stone itself was alive. In that moment, I noticed something. A shadowy figure started to form from the mist, rising slowly from the ground. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice trembling. The figure grew clearer, morphing into a woman with features I recognized. Marissa. Her eyes were wide, filled with an emotion I couldn't define. Fear? Anguish? It all flickered across her face like a movie reel stuck on repeat. "Please," she mouthed, but no words came out. Instead, the whispers morphed. "Find me," they pleaded urgently. The image of her began to warp, as if the forest itself rejected her presence. Panicking, I backed away from the stone. It felt wrong, almost hostile, and I suddenly remembered the librarian's words. "It feeds on fear." My breath quickened, and I could feel something encroaching from the shadows, an undeniable malevolence. The whispers turned frantic, a cacophony spiraling into chaos. I turned to run, but the mist thickened around me. "Help me," I could still hear Marissa's voice, now mingled with the sinister whispers of the forest. I glanced back, desperate to make sense of it all, when I noticed something glinting on the stone, a small pendant similar to the one I had found before. It was a simple design but bore the same inscription: "Forever a part of you." I hesitated, the conflict tearing me. Should I retrieve it? Would it unlock answers or only deepen the darkness surrounding me? When I heard footsteps. Real, solid footsteps advancing from the shadows. Panic surged through me. Someone else was here, and they might not be here to help. In a blur, I grabbed the pendant, feeling the cold metal bite into my palm. As I turned to make my escape, I caught sight of the silhouette stepping into the clearing. The unknown presence stood tall, and it was not alone. A chill crawled over my skin as I realized I had just stumbled into something much larger than I had ever imagined. "Run!" I yelled at myself, taking off deeper into the woods, heart pounding, with no idea what would happen next. I sprinted away, branches whipping against my face as I pushed through the underbrush. The whispers surged, mixing with my panic, as if the forest itself was urging me to flee. But I couldn't escape the image of Marissa, her face lingering in my mind like a ghost. What was happening? I had thought I was searching for her, but now it felt like I was running from something far worse. Suddenly, I stumbled over a root, falling onto the forest floor. I felt the pendant dig into my palm, the cold metal grounding me for a split second. As I scrambled back onto my feet, I heard laughter, sharp, unnatural, echoing through the trees. I skidded to a stop and turned my head, adrenaline surging through me. A small group of figures appeared in the distance, partially hidden by the shadows. They moved with a fluid grace, illuminated only by the faint light filtering through the canopy. My heart raced as they leaned into each other, whispering and pointing in my direction. Staring at them, I felt an urge to turn and bolt again, but curiosity rooted me in place. Who were they? Were they searching for Marissa too? Or worse, were they the ones trying to trap her spirit? I needed answers but didn't want to reveal myself. Another glance at the figures, and my breath hitched. One of them was wearing what appeared to be an old military jacket, faded and patched. It can't be, I murmured, caught between disbelief and rising fear. My mind raced back to the countless stories I'd read about the ghost soldiers, lost forever in this cursed forest. Had I just stumbled into their realm? My instinct screamed at me to retreat, but something, maybe the pendant, maybe the pulsing energy of the stone, compelled me to stay. I crouched low, hiding behind a thick trunk, my heart hammering loudly in my chest. Through my fear, I caught fragments of their conversation drifting through the air. The last sighting, still no sign of the target, we can't let them escape. The words clawed at my thoughts. Target? Who were they pursuing? Was Marissa in danger because of these figures? That's when I noticed movement to my right. A flash of white slipped through the dense trees before vanishing just as quickly. My curiosity piqued, I strained to listen. The whispers grew louder, converging like an incoming storm. Help me find me. Panic propelled me forward. The figures had turned their attention back toward the clearing, their laughter softening. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was unfolding here was tied to Marissa and that stone. But what if I was just walking into a trap? As I hesitated, the forest shifted around me. Shadows thickened, swirling with a life of their own. That was when I felt an icy breath on my neck. I whipped around, heart racing, as I faced nothing. Just silence and darkness pressing in like an angry tide. Get it together, Kayla, I whispered to myself, trembling as I glanced back at the figures. I needed a plan, but everything felt like it was closing in. Then I heard it again, help me. I took a deep breath, summoning what courage I could. If there was a chance to find Marissa, I had to figure out what these figures wanted. Just as I started to step closer, one of them turned sharply, locking eyes with me. Their gaze pierced through the darkness with a knowing intensity, and suddenly, everything shifted. The shadows around me came alive, transforming into a whirlwind of chaos. It was now or never. Run! I shouted in my mind, but my body was refusing to cooperate. I was trapped, caught between two worlds, with danger lurking on all sides. I knew I couldn't stay hidden much longer. The figure's eyes pulsed with awareness, a sharp contrast against the murky backdrop of the forest. My instincts screamed at me to move, but I felt paralyzed, caught in its gaze. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the trees, snapping me out of my daze. The figures turned toward the sound, confusion replacing their earlier camaraderie. It was my chance. I darted behind a cluster of bushes, heart pounding as I crouched low and listened. Something's out there, one of them said, his voice harsh and commanding. Split up and search. We can't let them get away. I held my breath as shadows flitted past me, brushing the underbrush. My pulse quickened, fear pooling in my stomach. They could be searching for Marissa. Desperately, I needed to find her first and figure out what this ghostly band was after. The whispers returned, wrapping around me like a dense fog, pulling me toward the heart of the chaos. "Help me," came the voice, clearer now, familiar and haunting. It was Marissa. I had to follow it. I edged slowly through the foliage, careful to stay silent. The figures had broken into smaller groups, their uniforms blending into the forest like moving shadows. Fear clenched my stomach. They were dangerous. But so was I if I didn't find Marissa. As I inched deeper, the trail grew colder, the light dimming further. I felt my pendant thrum against my chest, a pulse of warmth against the chill around me. Would it lead me to her or into a trap? There was only one way to find out. "Kayla." Marissa's voice called again, a sobbing plea that twisted my heart. I pressed on, determination hardening within me. Ahead, a light flickered in the trees. I approached slowly, knowing it could be a horrifying illusion. Stepping into the clearing, I found an old stone altar, draped with moss and surrounded by flowers that shone in the faint glow. Atop the altar lay an object, a small, tattered book. Its pages fluttered as though stirred by invisible hands. I reached for it, feeling an electric charge in the air, when a chilling voice broke the silence. "What are you doing here?" The voice was low and grave, sending a shiver down my spine. It was the figure in the military jacket. He emerged from the shadows, eyes narrowed, every bit of him exuding hostility. I backed away, my heart racing. "I'm looking for Marissa," I stammered, struggling to hold my ground. "Marissa? You shouldn't have come here." His tone shifted, betraying a hint of concern. "You'll only put yourself in danger." Before I could respond, the ground trembled. The shadows around me swirled rapidly, the forest groaning as if alive. I turned to run, but the earth splintered beneath my feet. I stumbled, regaining my balance just as the figure lunged for me. In that split second, I glanced back at the altar. The book lay there, and I realized it might hold the key to Marissa's fate. With my mind racing, I made a decision. I couldn't leave without it. I dove for the book, fingers brushing the brittle pages, hoping it would lead me to answers or to Marissa herself. The moment my fingers touched the book, a shattering force surged through me, pulling my awareness to the forefront. It felt as if the entire forest held its breath. The military figure froze, his eyes wide, reflecting an unexpected fear. I didn't waste the opportunity. Clutching the tattered object tightly, I pushed up from the altar and bolted back into the trees, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Behind me, there was a shout. "Stop! You can't just take that." The urgency in his voice fueled my flight, each step pounding against the earth as branches snagged my clothes and scratched my skin. I had no idea where I was going, I just needed to put as much distance between me and that figure as I could. The night closed in around me, a thick blanket of shadows that flickered in the corner of my vision. Was I being followed? I could hear voices, distant but growing closer. "She has the book," one of them called. Panic surged within me, igniting a primal instinct to survive. As I weaved through the trees, I fumbled to glance at the book. The pages fluttered again, revealing strange symbols and cryptic messages written in a language I didn't recognize. I squinted, trying to make sense of it, but it was as if the words were alive, scrambling and reforming with every shift of my focus. That's when I heard it again, the haunting whisper. "Help me." Marissa's voice echoed in the darkness, clearer than before. I halted, pulse racing, caught between the urgency to escape and the desperate need to find her. "Marissa?" I called back, my voice trembling. "Where are you?" "Kayla!" she shouted, a mix of pain and fear that sent chills down my spine. She was so close. I turned, desperate to follow the sound, but I was losing my bearings. Suddenly, a figure burst from the shadows, another of the uniformed men, his face obscured by the darkness. He lunged toward me, arms outstretched. I ducked just in time, instinctively raising the book as if it were a shield. The impact pushed me backward, and in my fall, I lost hold of my precious find that it landed with a dull thud, the pages flipping wildly. The soldier paused, eyes flicking to the book, then back to me. "I told you to leave," he shouted, but his voice held a note of desperation. "You don't understand. I need to find her," I cried, scrambling to retrieve the book. His expression shifted. For a heartbeat, uncertainty flashed across his face. From behind him, the shadows twisted, revealing the other figures, their movements synchronized as they emerged into the clearing. An oppressive wave of dread washed over me. They weren't just searching for me, they were hunting for something else, something connected to that book. In that moment, clarity struck me. The book was more than a relic, it was a key, and whatever Marissa had been caught up in was deeper than I could comprehend. My eyes darted around, searching for an escape route. As the soldiers advanced, I made a split-second decision. I grabbed the book and scrambled to my feet. "I'm getting Marissa," I shouted defiantly, though the words felt hollow against the weight of their determined stares. Then everything went dark. A thick fog rolled in, swirling around my feet and creeping up my legs. I coughed as the air turned stale and suffocating. I had no idea what was happening, but I felt my heart race again, this time out of sheer confusion and fear. What was this fog? What had I awoken with the book? I couldn't stay. I had to keep moving, to find Marissa before it was too late. But I could feel their eyes on me, and I knew the real hunt was just about to begin. I stumbled backward, the fog thickening around me as panic clawed at my throat. It wasn't just the darkness that frightened me. It was what lurked within it, a growing sense that I wasn't alone. Shapes shifted at the edges of my vision, shadows that moved independently of the trees. My instinct screamed for me to escape, but the ground shifted underfoot, like the forest itself was alive and shifting, trapping me in its tangled maze. "Marissa!" I shouted again, desperation spilling over. The book felt heavy in my hands, its pages suddenly clammy against my skin. Cries echoed through the fog, not only Marissa's voice but others' voices from the past, barely audible but chilling. I forced my feet to move, dodging low branches and shuffling through underbrush, but each second dragged, and the fog thickened. I tripped over a root, falling to my knees. I could hear them now. The soldiers were closing in, their footsteps crunching like thunder against the leaves. I scrabbled with my hands against the dirt, desperate to push myself up, and when I saw it, a glimmer through the fog. A flash of silver. Was it a weapon? No, it wasn't just that. As I squinted, I recognized the outline of an antique mirror leaning against a tree, almost hidden among the foliage. The glass reflected my wide eyes and the shadows swirling behind me. I hesitated. The soldiers were just a few meters away, voices urgent and low. She mustn't escape, not with that. Their panic was palpable, and the urgency propelled me forward. I stumbled toward the mirror, reaching out in a moment of instinct, grasping its cool edges. As I touched it, everything shifted again. A wave of energy coursed through me. Images flickered in the glass, Marissa, crying for help, surrounded by swirling shadows and cloaked figures. It was a vision, a glimpse into her torment. I gasped, reeling back as the full impact hit me. "Help me," she called again, her voice clearer, urgent. The shadows formed around her, their intention unclear but undeniably menacing. I felt a pull from the mirror, a connection I couldn't ignore. The soldiers' voices grew louder as I turned my gaze back to them. I had no time to waste. I had to act. I pushed aside my fear and sprinted toward the mirror, my heart pounding. With a deep breath, I prepared to leap through. "Stop!" I turned, catching a glimpse of the lead soldier entering the clearing, his eyes fixed on me with a fierce determination. The others followed close behind, weapons raised, but it was the fear in their eyes that struck me the most. In that moment, reality warped. The fog seemed to pulse, wrapping me in its grasp. I felt a sudden rush, as if I was being pulled forward not just through the mirror, but between dimensions. It was dizzying, disorienting. My senses blurred, a swirl of sound and color crashing into me, then, silence that I stumbled out the other side. My surroundings shifted once again, the fog dissipating in a flash. I gasped for breath, bewildered, confused. I stood alone in a strange place, but the forest was gone, replaced by an endless expanse of crumbling ruins and heavy, oppressive clouds. I was somewhere else entirely. Marissa? I called again, panic creeping back. I had escaped, but at what cost? Where was I? And was Marissa still close? Then I heard it, a distant cry echoing in the wind, followed by that same haunting plea. Help me. A chill ran through me. I took a step forward, the weight of the book still firmly in my grasp. Whatever I had unleashed was not over yet. I was still being hunted, but this time, it felt as if I wasn't the only one searching. I took another step, each footfall sinking into the dust of the crumbling ruins. The air was thick with despair, heavy enough to stifle my breath. The distant cry for help reverberated, drawing me in like a moth to a flame. Marissa! I called, my voice sounding small against the vast emptiness around me. I scanned the horizon, the skeletal remains of what might have once been a village spreading out before me. Gates hung off their hinges, and walls crumbled into themselves, overtaken by weeds. My heart raced as I fought the urge to turn back. I didn't know how much time I had before anything or anyone caught up with me. A sudden noise caught my attention, a rustle behind one of the toppled bricks. My instinct was to hide, but something deep down urged me to push on. I took a cautious step closer, the weight of the book in my hands grounding me. Marissa? I whispered, hoping against hope. Maybe it was her, lost among the stones. Instead, a figure emerged, a young girl, her expression one of anguish. Please, she said, her voice trembling. You have to help her. They won't stop. Who are you? I demanded, heart pounding. Are you with Marissa? Her eyes widened, a mix of fear and urgency flooding her expression. No time. You must hurry. She's trapped. They're coming. I felt a rush of confusion. Who's coming? What do you mean? She pointed toward the shadows cast by the ruins. The Watchers. They know you're here. If you don't hurry, it'll be too late. Without thinking, I stepped back, pulling away from her. Wait. What are the Watchers? But she didn't answer. Instead, she turned and raced away, disappearing into the maze of rubble. I hesitated, glancing back where she had been. I could feel the unease settle in. Whoever she was, she seemed tied to this place, just like Marissa. The echo of footsteps flared in my mind, and I recalled the soldiers, their shouts ripping through the fog. I had to find Marissa now. No more distractions. I sprinted forward, the crumbling ground beneath me groaning as I dashed through the ruins. Marissa! I called, desperation bubbling in my throat. Each shout felt like a lifeline, a reminder of why I was here. Then, ahead, I caught a glimpse of light flickering, a pale glow emanating from a tattered banner hanging between two dilapidated columns. Hope surged within me as I quickened my pace. The light felt like a beacon calling me, promising answers, promising Marissa. As I approached, the air grew oddly still. The world around me darkened, shadows crawling up from the ground, hungry and restless. I felt the weight of unseen eyes watching me as I neared the source of the light. Just as I reached out, something pulled at my shirt, a whisper in my ear. You shouldn't have come here, it hissed. I froze, dread flooding my senses. Every instinct screamed for me to turn, to run. But the light flickered again, captivating me. The choice lay before me: confront the lurking specter of whatever haunted this place, or chase after the fading echoes of Marissa's cries. With a deep breath, I steeled myself and stepped toward the glow. Whatever was waiting for me, I'd have to face it. But just as I committed, the ground rumbled beneath me, and a voice bellowed in anger from the depths of the ruins that I realized then I had awakened something. The air crackled around me, a heavy tension that felt suffocating. I heard Marissa's voice again, distant yet clear. "Help me." With my heart racing, I stumbled toward the flickering light emanating from the banner, every moment feeling like a weight pressing against my chest. I could still feel the shadows closing in, but I pushed through, driven by something deep within. I had to find her. The light grew more intense as I approached, illuminating the faces of trapped souls caught within the ruins. They all turned as one, drawn to the glow but unable to move closer. Fear crashed over me, but I couldn't turn back. I had to reach Marissa. As I crossed the threshold of light, a sudden stillness enveloped me. Everything changed in an instant, the whispers, the shadowy figures, they all fell silent. Before me lay a spectral figure bathed in radiant light, and as it began to take form, I realized it was Marissa. Her face contorted in anguish, she reached out toward me with trembling hands. "You're here," she gasped, relief washing over her. "Hang on. I'll help you," I yelled, driven by the desperation that clawed at my throat. But before I could do anything, her expression shifted to horror. "No. You don't understand. It's not safe." The light flickered, and in its place a deep shadow emerged, an entity coalescing from the darkness. It loomed large, a figure composed of darkness and despair, and the memories of those it had claimed flowed through its form. Marissa's face paled as she backed away. "Run!" she cried, but I was frozen in place, my feet glued to the spot. I felt the weight of the book in my hands, pulsating as if it knew the creature's intentions. My instincts shouted at me to hide, to escape. But the urge to save her overrode all else. That I finally found my voice. "What do you want? Why are you doing this?" I shouted, the words barely making it past the lump in my throat. The shadow twisted, its form shifting and contorting, feeding off my fear. Voices echoed from within, a swirling cacophony of despair. "We take what we need. Fear, anguish, they make us whole." With a sudden surge of courage, I raised the book. "Leave her alone. She hasn't done anything to you." The pages fluttered wildly beneath my grip, the strange symbols glowing as if responding to my defiance. The shadow hesitated for a moment, its swirling mass jittering uneasily, then it lunged toward me, stretching thin tendrils of darkness. I could feel the coldness creeping closer, and instinct kicked in. I screamed and flung the book toward Marissa. "Take it. It might help you." The moment the book touched her hands, a blinding light exploded between us, creating a barrier that pushed the shadow back. Marissa's face brightened with newfound hope, and she immediately opened the book. The pages turned rapidly, and sealed within were the secrets of the entities lurking in the woods, whispers of salvation. "You have to believe," Marissa shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You have to face your fear." With that, the shadow reared back but continued to stretch toward us, desperate to reclaim its hold on the world it had lost. My fear surged, but I steadied myself, focusing on the warmth flooding the space where Marissa stood. I could feel her resolve, and it infused me with strength. I took a breath, drawing in the light, and summoned everything I had left. "Enough. You're not taking anyone else," I called, steel lacing my voice. The entity recoiled, losing its coherence. As it faltered, I felt a current connecting me to Marissa, the weight of her presence urging me on. I reached my hand toward her and she mirrored my movements, closing the distance that had felt insurmountable just moments before. "Now!" we yelled in unison. The light brightened, turning into a beam that pierced through the heart of darkness. The shadow shrieked, the cacophony of lost souls mingling in an agonized wail, dissipating like smoke. As the last trace of it fled, I felt the oppressive weight lift from my chest. For a fleeting moment, we stood together, two souls grounding one another in the quiet. Aftermath. But as I reached for Marissa's hand, the world around us began to fragment. Wait! I called out, but the shimmering veil of light began to fold, pulling us apart. Find me again. She implored, her voice echoing through the rift. Don't forget. And in an instant, all the color drained away, leaving me in darkness once more. I stumbled back, gasping for breath, the book slipping from my hands. I was back in the ruins, alone, surrounded by silence. The ground held no warmth, only fragments of memories swirling in the air. My heart was still racing, a paradox of triumph and loss soaking through me. I had found her, yet she remained just out of reach. I looked around, feeling the shadows linger as if to remind me of what I had encountered. Whatever that darkness was, it might have been vanquished, but it wouldn't be the last time I felt its presence. With that bittersweet knowledge, I tucked the book under my arm and made my way through the ruins, the echoes of whispers still vibrating through the air, unanswered questions swirling in my mind. What truly lay in the woods? What truly lay within me? As I stepped out into the fading light, I realized the journey was far from over. I still needed to uncover the truth. I walked away from the ruins, heart heavy but filled with an unshakable determination. I would find Marissa again, that promise etched in my memory as I moved back toward my world. Shadow and light danced in my periphery, and I knew that whatever lingered in the darkness would always be watching, waiting for its next move. And as for me? I was forever entwined in this mystery, and I would never forget.